651 Carpets Plus Studios on a gorgeous Monday morning. It is Nordo in for PA a late scratch. He'll be back with us. A little bit of a Monday bug. But that's okay. It's Nordo in for PA. Thank you, Brett Blakemore, for hanging out with me this morning. A lot to get into. It's a week from today in which we all, as Vikings fans, we're dream weaving our way to free agency, ton of cap space, not a lot of draft picks. And who are our favorite names into the beginning of next week? The odd legal tampering period that where most of these deals will be consummated, and we're all waiting for the fax machines to fire up Wednesday and make these things official. That's going to be a focal point throughout the week, of course, 9 to noon. But last night, let's start here. Ant returned.
Edwards takes a run on Beal off the Randall screen, pops on the three and seals the win. Anthony Edwards, a 40-point game here in the desert, and the Wolves lead by 14 with 2 minutes left to play.
How about that? The domination was back from Anthony Edwards, who was returning from his one-game suspension against Utah later last week. The technical fouls, the frustration, the fines, were throwing balls into the crowd, which maybe in some ways would be preferred over maybe flipping off the crowd. But for a night, Anthony Edwards was back. Maybe the suspension served him well. Certainly a couple of days off, whether it was the hip soreness into the All-Star break, working with that calf that it sounds like has been affecting him in one way or another. He was back last night. Anthony Edwards, 12 of 22 with the 44. And what a beautiful night it was. Not just the return of Anthony Edwards, but the return of Julius Randle. And I know somewhere PA is listening and managing his feng shui fantasy basketball lineup, thankful for the return of Julius. And the juice was good. 20 points from him, a couple of triples, and he was wheeling and dealing, a few assists, 6 boards on the night for him. On a night where we all love Nas. Oh, my goodness. Starting, I think he was 0 of 9 from the field last night. Now, the Minnesota Timberwolves, they're having a habit of housing the Phoenix Suns, no matter who's playing, whether it be, we're talking about the playoff series a year ago. It can be Durant, who did his thing last night. It can be Booker. It can be Beal. Beal's different levels and certainly different stages. Beal feels like, to me, Bradley Beal, terrific career, albeit in some ways with the consummate loser in the Washington Wizards. Bradley Beal sometimes feels to me like their version of our Mike Conley, where we love Mike. But man, did he age a lot over the course of the 2024 summer. And so they're dealing with their own issues. They got Bol in there trying to make plays. It ain't great for the Suns right now. And the Minnesota Timberwolves took advantage of that. Wolves fans, I do have a question for you, though. You know, Don, so this team's gradually getting healthier. We dig that. The Minnesota Timberwolves, a bit of a hole to climb out of in the Western Conference standings. They're 17 games out of first. Probably not getting the 1 seed. You know, going out on a limb, I suppose. But they're just a win or two away from jumping all the way into that 6th spot. And then the grind would continue, you know, in terms of exiting the play-in. And ultimately, at that point, where would they be sitting at? They'd be going on the road potentially either to the Nuggets, currently in the 3rd spot, maybe the Lakers, the Grizzlies are right there. Those 3 teams all within half a game of each other. The Rockets behind them, as good as that team has been at times throughout the year, the Rockets really struggling in and out of the All-Star break. Well, my question is, speaking of Mike Conley, is it time, and you can text 64686, Bradshaw and Bryant, KFAN text line. Now we'll read them. I promise to read some. How about that? We've been told that sometimes we don't read as many texts as we should, Brett. So, 2025 New Year's resolutions. I mean, it's March, so it's a little late to the party there. We're going to start reading more texts.
I like it.
How about that? Is it, are we getting to the stage here maybe where we got to think about Dante DiVincenzo just starting games? Just being in that spot. and starting games for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Dante DiVincenzo coming off the bench, still got 27 minutes off the pine, 8 of 14, 8 of 13 from deep, 5 steals last night. The defense was unbelievable from Dante. Are we getting to that point, Wolves fans, where we have to start considering the idea of just starting Dante DiVincenzo? He started a bunch of games due to injury, whether it was the hand of a Jalen Brunson in New York and just shifting things around from a personnel standpoint that put DiVincenzo in a spot where they were leaning on him not only for massive minutes, but massive scoring, the type of scoring that we saw last night, not hitting 8 every night. But he was, I believe, he had the most made threes in the NBA last year. And he did that because he was getting those minutes and was starting games for the Knicks before being moved here. Does it feel like it might be time? And into the trade and the way that this thing's been shaped post Karl Anthony Towns, deepening the bench. And last night, until it was Finch was heavy on 7 guys, I think. And you can put Jalen Clark in that mix, but he played like 10 minutes last night, not a lot. And then at the end, when it was obvious, when it was over, the Minots, the Millers, the Garzas, etc., Dillingham, they got into the game for the final 2. But he leaned heavily, Finch did, on 7 guys, basically, in that rotation last night. Dante and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who was nothing short of hideous last night, 0 of 6 from the field. So deepening the bench and being able to bring in and deploy DiVincenzo, that was kind of the idea. And I like it. Got off to a slow start shooting. Clearly has found his legs. And now, thankfully, this great toe, which was not great for about 3 weeks, the great toe is great again. And he's back again. What do you think about the idea of starting Dante DiVincenzo and letting him do his thing from the jump on a night-by-night basis? 64686, Bradshaw and Bryant, text line. No fouls last night for Ant. Even avoided freaking out on a clear foul that wasn't called. So he doesn't get them all, but he was 14 of 14 at the line last night on the ones he did get. Just so good. That's the Anthony Edwards we want. That's the Anthony Edwards we love. That's the Anthony Edwards that we absolutely need. So they jump home. They got Sixers tomorrow. Sixers are just a complete mess. When they got Quentin Grimes leading them in scoring, the Sixers are in trouble. No more Embiid. So that thing, the process, is on delay once again, but excited to see them come home. I think they then jump to either Charlotte. They're back on the road. It might be a back-to-back this next week. So looking forward to seeing them. And how about the Minnesota Wild yesterday?
The long for Spurgeon. Now Zuccarello. Spurgeon activates. Zuccarello in the high slot. Johansson a shot. He scores! Marcus Johansson from the high slot, and the Wild have a 1-0 lead.
The 1-0 over Boston yesterday, Brett. You heard the call there. Johansson with the goal. It actually went off of Goudreau's backside, did it not?
Yeah, it caught a piece of him. Hey, they all count.
I wonder what's tougher, the bank off the butt or just scoring a goal let's call it the more traditional way of just shooting it in. It was an impressive effort from the Minnesota Wild staving off the Bruins yesterday. They get that win. And the theme of this team, injured as they are, defending home ice, right, Brett? I mean, it's not just for the home crowd, although you want State of Hockey to be pumped at the X on a weekend afternoon, and you got that. But you win in your own building, you weather the injury storm, because I have Micheletti in studio at 11 o'clock, and that's going to be all levels of hockey. This is a feast this week. You got Gophers in the Big Ten tourney. You have the high school hockey tournament. Should have mentioned that first, and I apologize. And then, of course, the Minnesota Wild continuing their way. So tons of hockey to get into with Micheletti. And so this will sound like I don't want to be doom and gloom to start a Monday. It's going to be beautiful. But 9 points clear of a playoff spot, we're comfortable, right? Are we still comfortable? Are things weird, Brett?
I would think so. There is a little bit of me that goes, I don't know. But It was a great performance, and Gus was great. I was looking at the 3 stars from last night. 1, Gustafson. 2, Spurgeon, who didn't have, obviously, any points. If those are your first 2 stars and you shut them out, I think it was a pretty good defensive performance. And that's the way they're going to have to do it, because offense, as long as Kaprizov and Eck, for that matter, are out, offense is going to be tough to come by.
Text line back to the Wolves momentarily. Dan here. I was at your wedding.
Wow.
Oh, Dan was at my wedding.
Do you know Dan?
No, I'm kidding.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Say hey to Eden and the babes for me. I think Dante has been a great galvanizer off the bench, but Dillingham can and will be that guy. Dante should start. Conley can be more of a player coach. Clark for defense. There are a couple of text messages. Yes, I do remember this, but just thinking in totality, they actually did sit Mike Conley and were putting DiVincenzo in the mix shortly before he did hurt said great toe. I think Dante, this is from Aaron, I think Dante brings that punch off the bench. He's looking like his 2024 Knicks self right now. This team is up and down, but when we're at the best, the Wolves can take down anybody. Julius' return cannot be understated as to how important he is to this team. I agree when he is, as you said, Aaron, energetic, focused, and more in tune with the game plan. Yes, I agree. Derek in St. Paul, yes. Dante should start. Tired of Conley not scoring. I appreciate the text messages. We're going to continue to read more. 2025, read more texts. But yeah, back to the Minnesota Wild. They're at Kraken tomorrow, and then Friday, Vancouver. So a little West Coast swing. Mm-hmm. 7 straight at home after that. Starts on Sunday, Penguins in town. And the only reason I focus on that, of course you got to win game. They've had trouble with that this year. But can I be so simplistic in just saying dominate home ice, win at a reasonable clip, and you're a playoff team, right?
Yeah, here's the difference. The story of the season has not been thus far defending home ice, because they have not been good on home ice. They've been historically bad on home ice, actually. Whoa. Usually the X is a pretty good place to defend, and they usually play well at home. Has not been the case this year. I mean, they're 14, 13, and 1 from home, so they're basically 500, which is pretty. But the theme could be going forward, where you're right, as long as they do defend home ice, they've got a good shot. And with hockey, it's better to be ahead. Chasing teams with this point system is so hard, but you can defend leads by basically just hanging around and trying to get to overtime. So they're in a good spot, but we'd still like the help.
Now, one thing I'll get into with Micheletti, do you ever play the game mentally where I don't want to be dealt with this Dallas Stars hand again? Yeah. So if they did slip to a wild card spot and faced Winnipeg, faced a different team, I don't know if you can be cute and play that game. But the Minnesota Wild getting the victory yesterday, defend home ice and weather this injury storm. Joel Eriksson Ek and Kirill, oh my. Matt Boldy, by the way, with 8 shots yesterday. I wonder if you can almost tell like he's gripping with that shouldered burden, like he knows more is on his plate. And that could almost be like a prop bet bit. Ovechkin's nearing Gretzky in goals. So just watch game by game how many shots that Ovi's getting. Now, in the next handful of games, watch how many shots Matt Boldy is getting on a nightly basis or taking. Now, not all shots are created equal. Boldy did not find himself on the score sheet last night, but he clearly can feel the burn of needing to produce for our favorite hockey team. So we're going to get into all sorts of different hockey. Back to the text line momentarily before we set things up and pause. Free agency, the legal tampering, starts a week from today. That'll be a big part of this week. Very thematic week, 9 to noon with the purple. But I do like this text message. They didn't leave a name, but any notes that he was starting a few games before he got hurt. But the idea is he's fine with him coming off the bench as long as he closes the game and plays heavy minutes. So I like that text because it almost makes me, am I playing, is this a semantics game with DiVincenzo being back, being healthy, loving what I saw last night? From the idea is he can chill on the bench. As long as he gets that 27, 28 minutes, we're feeling fine. And so looking at the Wolves right now, though, terrific performance last night. Anthony Edwards, the A topic with this operation, keeping his head. He did that, continue doing that. Julius being back. This is a really good operation right now when they're healthy and when they're playing like they did last night in housing the Phoenix Suns. TimberTech set list brought to you by TimberTech, timbertech.com. First hour football heavy. We will begin kind of the process of dream weaving a little bit, if you will. Again, a week from legal tampering. Free agency opens up a week from Wednesday. Vikings got a ton of cash. What are they going to do with that cash? And that's going to be the fun part about it, being in on huge names. Who are your favorite names? More text messages. Why not on a Monday morning? 64686. Bradshaw and Bryant text line. Thank you. Talkbacks, free iHeartRadio app as well. Always interested in those. But who are some favorite free agents that you have that are potentially entering the fold and could be wearing purple and gold by the end of next week? Think about that for a second. I'm going to go through some names. I got some highlights and some names that I absolutely love, some that I'm having fun with. But really, ultimately, with this team, their needs, filling holes on that depth chart, filling holes on that roster. This team has more flexibility financially than they've had in a very long time. Free agency could be fun for your Minnesota Vikings. We saw a measured spending spree last year. What's it going to look like in 2025? We'll talk about that. Jack Brewer, former Gopher, went undrafted, former Viking. I believe he was a captain on both of those teams, played several years in the NFL. He's in town. We're going to chat football with him. We're also going to find out about something that's taking place at the Capitol today that he's going to be a big part of, and he's really excited about it. And I'm excited to hear from Jack Brewer. That's at 10 o'clock. And then at 11 a.m., Pat Micheletti, as I mentioned, beyond the pond, beyond the pod. He does everything. He's in studio. We're going to talk about hockey with Pat Mick 2626. Brett Blakemore produces. I'm Nordo. You're listening to The Fan.
KFAN.
This week, it's tourney time, and you can watch all the state championship action on 45 TV or by downloading the KSTP app on your smart TV, or head over our contest page for your chance to win all sessions tickets for this week's boys hockey tournament to catch all the action in person. KFAN.com, keyword contest, enter.
Vikes Bites!
Vikes Bites!
I got this text message, 64686, Bradshaw and Bryant, KFAN text line. I love this. Let's put his name out there. Kirk Cousins.
Come on!
On a veteran minimum to mentor and back up McCarthy. Now that is, talking about dream weaving and free agency a week from today, the legal tampering period. That is predicated on the idea that the Falcons would be actually following through. I think they have to cut Kirk, and whatever that looks like, and then, but they still owe him a ton of guaranteed cash from that hideous contract they gave him a year ago. And so the Vikings could technically sign Kirk Cousins on a veteran minimum, and the Falcons would still be on the hook for like $28-29 million, something like that. If you are making the move to McCarthy, I'd probably just say, good luck elsewhere, Kirk. And Kirk will probably have suitors to actually start versus even the idea of competing to start in whatever capacity that, as Kevin O'Connell's framing this thing up here. Want to start the McCarthy era, maybe have a Daniel Jones type. Daniel Jones going to be a free agent as well, and maybe he has an opportunity to start, and he'll be gone. There's Nick Mullins or Brett Rippon. What does Brett Rippon do for you? If Brett Rippon's the guy, then it's McCarthy's team, right? But I would see Kirk getting opportunities still at this stage, despite how bad last year went. He's tried his best, and maybe he's being truthful about it, that he hit his elbow and he was having arm issues, and that was kind of coinciding. Was it a Saints game, maybe the second time they played them? But that was coinciding with that loss streak, the 0 touchdowns, the 8-9 interceptions he had over that stretch, including an awful performance against the Purple here at U.S. Bank Stadium last December. So if he's effectively explained that away, he probably will get a chance on a very, very cheap dime to a team similar, a la Russ Wilson with the Steelers this year. I don't think Kirk's going to be in purple. Vikes Bites, though, is provided by Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed grass-fed beef. You can shop online, learn about regenerative agriculture, how nutrient-dense this delicious product is, and you can a box of meat will show up at your doorstep. That's sweet. And then it's a Clearwater, Minnesota-based company, so you're supporting local. You can get them at Kowalski's and Coburn's, local co-ops as well. They're proud sponsors of Gophers Athletics, so Gophers athletes are eating Thousand Hills on the training table. Think about that. So thank you, Thousand Hills. Where are we headed to with Vikes Bites first?
Vikes Bites!
Well, the good news is the talker that just will not die, the Sam Darnold, will they tag him? Will he not? Will he go? Will he stay? Finally has a deadline. It is tomorrow is the deadline for franchise tagging. So finally we'll get some resolution, or at least a step forward to resolution. But I have a two-part question, because oftentimes, when I'm trying to come up with a take, it is what will happen and what should happen. And usually those are two different things. With this deadline tomorrow, Nordo, what do you think will happen with Sam Darnold and what should happen with Sam Darnold?
Yeah, I'm still on the... And I saw some rumors, was it over the weekend maybe, that there was something about the Raiders, of course, Matt Stafford getting his contract restructured. And so then maybe Pete Carroll was looking over those stalks of corn and those tall rows, our Midwestern borders. Beautiful, speaking of agriculture, beautiful as it is. Looking at Sam Darnold for the idea of getting his services in 2025. The tag and trade. I still just believe, and I have really since the beginning, that threading the needle on a tag and trade for Sam Darnold is going to be exceptionally difficult. And so I believe both what will happen and I guess technically what should. I think that Sam will not be franchise tagged and he'll have the opportunity to negotiate with teams. I know that we want something from it, and it's cool that we got those 14 wins, but any possible way that Kwesi can squeeze a draft pick out of this, that's a W. So it's not like I'm against it. And there's still, as you mentioned, there's still time for me to be dead wrong. And if I find out that he was tagged, then it's like, okay, I wonder who the suitor is. And could it be the Las Vegas Raiders? Could it be the Cleveland Browns, right? So again, threading that needle of you have to have the conversation with the team. In some ways, the player's agent has to have that conversation as well. The team that's taking him on, you got to agree on that draft compensation. And this is in the handshake form. The tag is official. That's the key. The deal that ultimately will be made, that hasn't been made yet and can't be made until the tag is official. Right now, all other conversations are simply handshakes. So you got to squeeze the draft pick out of them, and then that new team already has to be incredibly confident that they're going to be able to sign him. And so I think there's too many moving parts with it. And so what will happen, what should, I'm still leaning on the side that he will not be tagged. And there'll be some disappointment there. Man, it would have been cool. I mean, even if it's an extra 5th-round pick or something like that. Again, we're not getting a 3rd-round pick for him here. We're talking about a late-round draft pick compensation because, again, the fact that we're tagging him and then immediately looking to trade him tells the story to any agent and any general manager out there. We are trying to move on. We're just trying to squeeze just a few more drops of blood out of this stone if we possibly can. Will you help us out? And, oh, by the way, the benefit to you is in this particular case, you wouldn't have to then be vying and jockeying for position with other teams. So there are dual benefits there, the exclusivity of it in this case. But in the end, you're telling that story that, yeah, we want to move on. We just want to see if we can get a little extra something. And so you're not getting a 3rd-round pick for Sam Darnold in a tag and trade. Now, we'll take any draft compensation we need at this point in time. But in the end, I do believe that threading that needle is going to be a little bit too difficult. and excited for the news within the next 20 minutes that they franchise tagged him. I'm sure that's how it'll go. That's just how it's felt to me since the beginning. Loved Sam's work here in 2024. I do still believe, though, that you'll see him wearing a different team's uniform come springtime.
Vikes Bites.
Let's go here because I don't want to leave Darnold quite yet because we've always thought about this from the Vikings perspective, right? What's going to be best for the Minnesota Vikings, whether it's, moving on, whether it's keeping him, because you've only got, 4 draft picks this year. So, yeah, if you can get another draft pick, that'd be great. Let's look at it from Sam Darnold's perspective. I don't think he has much say in this. It's not like he's going to. But if you were him, and the best situation is to try to stay here. But, if you're going to go, Raiders, Browns, Giants, it just doesn't seem like a very good. Would you be willing to take quite a big paycheck cut if that's what it took to stay in Minnesota if you're Sam Darnold? What's best for his perspective?
What level? Well, I think what's best for Sam Darnold from his perspective is that he gets to start again.
Yeah.
And he gets the most possible dollars for that. There are other things that he would, now it's most possible dollars, but then what's the level of what is the amount of credit that Sam Darnold gives Kevin O'Connell and the Minnesota Vikings for his 2024 season? What's the proper amount of credit? That can be subjective and discussed. But what is the amount of credit that he would give this team? Does he believe that this is repeatable? Was this truly an awakening moment for him that he can go to Las Vegas and he's going to become pretty good friends with Brock Bowers? And I think they still have Jacoby Myers there. And they'll be able to do it again. You know what I mean?
No, I get you.
Vikes Bites.
We can go here.
No, I'm not done yet.
Oh, sorry.
I was hoping that you would say something.
It was a dramatic pause.
Well, as you saw me, because you can see me, no one else can. I was drinking water.
I thought there was a dramatic sip of "I'm done, move on."
Well, yeah, it was a dramatic.
Sorry.
It was a dramatic sip because I needed some water. I was in the desert and I needed water,
yeah,
Brett.
That's fine.
Where were you?
All right.
Okay,
but I was trying to help you out. I was going to move on to the next thing and set up my next question for you.
I don't want to move on. I'm looking for the best from Sam Darnold. I'm hoping that he finds his place with a team in which he can be successful. I am interested in moving on to J.J. McCarthy. So the idea that, what would it take for him to be here? I think from a financial perspective, you are talking about another 1 year gun for hire type deal, $10, $12 million, something like that. And I think even if it's a short term and it's still kind of in that prove it, because the rumblings from Indy and there are enough people nationally that are still kind of going, loved what Sam did and he got himself paid, but it was just 1 year. It was in a very, very quarterback friendly system. There were circumstances and variables that truly worked in his favor. So I think there are some rumblings and some grumblings about that may limit his top-end value in free agency, but in the end, he's going to get paid by another team much more than I think the Vikings would be willing if they're going to keep him around. So the tag and trade, somebody texting in the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line, I agree. Vikings aren't trading Sam for anything less than a third-round pick if they can just wait and get a third-round pick next year from a compensation standpoint. Yeah, I agree with that, but I also don't believe they're going to get a third-round pick in a tag and trade. So therefore, if they're not going to get that, and they're not interested in doing it for a fifth-rounder, then I don't believe that they'll tag him. So that's kind of, we agree. I think we were just coming at it from different angles, but I appreciate the text message. Where are we at next?
Vikes Bites.
Everyone knows the offensive line is issue number 1, 2, 3. It's been talked about ad nauseum. Offensive linemen who are standing out at the combine. So if we take that out of the conversation, because we all know that wants and needs to be rebuilt, is there a sleeper position that you think not a lot of people are talking about that really needs addressing that's not the offensive line?
With my favorite team?
That's right.
A sleeper position that needs to be rebuilt. Yeah, the hottest talkers with the team. I mean, I don't think it's a sleeper position. I think the running back spot needs to get a lot better. And I liked Aaron Jones's services for the most part, but he lost explosion. He did get nicked up. He stayed on the field, which is cool. Something you haven't been able to say in Green Bay for a number of years prior. But in the end, the explosive running, the consistent running. Now, some of that plays back into the offensive line, though, right? So defensively, you could say sneakily that safety, not necessarily in 2025, but moving forward. If Harrison Smith's going to retire, I think there's 1 year left on the deal of Josh Metellus. Cam Bynum could potentially go elsewhere in free agency. What does that room look like? So that, comes draft time. If you see a couple of defensive backs among the low amount of selections that the Vikings have available. If you saw a safety in that mix, would you necessarily be surprised? Cornerback's pretty obvious. It's pretty in your face with that thing. The entire room basically is gone, and it sounds like the Vikings are still vying for maybe the services of Byron Murphy Jr. on a longer-term deal. Not mad at that. Bring him back. Love Byron Murphy. And maybe they're also looking, as we'll talk about next segment, maybe they're looking over the fence at some other high-end free agents, a DJ Reed type, perhaps. We'll see. But under the radar, how under the radar, if you're a Vikings fan, is the defensive front? How under the radar is it getting a sack, and it's a little bit different spot, 4-3 versus 3-4, but somebody that can consistently provide pressure and accumulate some sacks and affect the game, hurries and pressures, etc., from a defensive tackle spot. Is that under the radar to you as a Vikings fan? Overall, really liked what Cashman was doing in the middle of the field. Liked Ivan Pace as that second guy. Could we still even get better there? That's potentially a topic. But really on this team, I would say that the running back spot for me, and maybe it's sneaky from the safety side, you can look at those as being under the radar or certainly not as prioritized as the conversations have surrounded around the trenches. But I think from a Vikings fan standpoint, I don't know if there's much under the radar at this point. I think they're, and it's not. I'm not saying you were insinuating that Vikings fans weren't looking at all of these areas. They are. They've been mock drafting since early January.
We saw us a couple months earlier.
I don't think Darnold hadn't been sacked his 8th time in that Rams game, and Vikings fans were already looking ahead to the NFL draft. So they're on it. But those are two positions in the end. When we're prioritizing, I'm looking at O-line and D-line. I'm looking at those spots. Corner, then we're having that conversation. But as exciting, I'm just. Everything that's gone right during Kevin O'Connell's tenure, all the good things. It's just ever since just randomly looking some things up in 2022 and realizing that they were nearly an 80% throwing team on 3rd and short. And they had some explosive plays. They had some touchdowns. And they had a lot of 4th and shorts that followed that. The inability for this team to, we saw it in the Detroit Lions game. We've gone through this. You were 0-3 in goal to go. You were 0-4 in the red zone. We're throwing 4 times at the doorstep. We know about those things. The O-line is a massive problem, specifically on the interior. So that needs to be fixed. D-line. But at a base level, a game changer at that running back spot in an offense that loves to throw. I know that. We need that game changer there. And then maybe the safety spot with changing of the guard.
One more?
Sure.
Vikes Bites.
I want to go here because at this time, we're approaching the abyssiest of the abyssiest times of the year. And in the offseason for me, the only thing that is appointment TV is the first round of the draft, where I have to watch that start to finish. Because even second, third,
what about
fourth
Friday
round,
night?
I'll get the Twitter updates. I'll figure out who we drafted.
Friday night is where champions are won, Brett.
Well, I'll figure it out.
Or is it
shortly
Saturday?
After. I don't know. Whatever the second or third round is. But the Combine. I don't know if I've ever watched a 40-yard dash in person. Meanwhile, who we love, and I'm not ripping him at all. I love Meat Sauce. And he has Louis on the TV broadcast of the picture of his tweet of him watching the Combine. He's locked in for it. Am I guess, The question is, how locked in were you for the combine? Does that do anything for you? And am I in the wrong for just not being interested?
I watch some of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't lock in, get the popcorn going. It used to be like, and the draft, as you mentioned, years ago when it was much more condensed, it wasn't on the 3 days as it is now. Yeah. Back college years, get a case of beer and watch the whole thing and watch the breakdowns. And that's where we would get our elite opinions from Mel Kiper, et cetera. Love that. Now, I mean, by nature of being a Vikings fan and working here at the Fan, I watch almost all of the draft. Saucy and I will do, I believe, we're doing a show on Friday.
Looking forward to that.
Round 2 and 3. And then I believe we'll be doing, good text. Sorry, I'm a little bit of like a bird and a shiny object. How about center for the Minnesota Vikings? Yes! That is a sneaky, under-the-radar spot. Good call. 1 year left on Garrett Bradbury's contract. I think it's about $6 million. And then he's going to be a free agent. That's a sneaky spot. I agree. I still think it's favored that they play out this last year with Bradbury. But if the Vikings were to do something in that spot, I think there's a guy from the Falcons. I'll look at it during the break. I got a name. It's right there. Can't find it quite yet. I'll get there.
Falcons center?
Talking center, yeah, free agent. I think he played for the Falcons. I think it's Dahlman.
Yeah,
anyway.
Dahlman.
So we're going to be doing shows on Saturday. As far as the combine is concerned, I kind of like the aftermath, and it's nice. Yeah, I mean, in terms of watching the workouts themselves, I will catch more highlights via X now, maybe than in years past, just as times change. But if you're a hardcore Rube and you want to sit down and you're a Vikes fan and you want to learn all about these guys, watch 15 hours of coverage. You're going to come away like a freaking scientist. You're going to know more about some obscure tackle who played at Elon, not Ole Udo, somebody else, I'm sure, than I will. And that's awesome. So all of that information coming out in one weekend. I love all the fanfare. I miss going to the combine as we kind of shifted. Now the team takes PA and they do a ton of video content out there, and it's really cool. I enjoyed going to the combine. We never sat and watched the workouts. As it expanded and evolved, we were on the concourse at Lucas Oil, so a bunch of the players would be walking by, but we never really saw anything. Weren't even allowed, I don't believe, to go into the stadium to watch the workouts. Now there's this massive fan zone, and we do have like the bench press and some of those drills in the same conference hall as the Radio Row, so you get to see some of that. And the bench pressing bit, by the way, is awesome. I mean, these guys roll in. I doubt I could I don't know if I could get it halfway up at 225. That's embarrassing, and I need to work on it, and I will, I promise you. But you see these guys, and then you got the motivator, the hype man there. Get it. One more. Fight through it. It's awesome. I need that guy when I go to the gym. He's not available, though. I like the combine. I like digging into it, but I am not sitting on the couch for hours on end watching all of it. I like reading about it afterwards. Like Ariante Ursary. This guy, 6'5", 6'6", 330 something.
It's a great name.
Ran a 5-second 40. How scary is that guy? That guy's going to be drafted. How about that? Sky Uma, go Gophers. That is sweet. So congratulations to him on creating some buzz for himself down in Indy. And I like those types of stories. Those types of guys. Not that we didn't know about Ursary. A lot of people around the country didn't. And they know now because he's a freaking flash. A 5-second 40 at his size is ludicrous. So that's super cool. That's Vikes Bites, brought to you by Thousand Hills. Speaking of cool, Thousand Hills lifetime grazed grass-fed beef, Clearwater, Minnesota's finest. Vikes Bites on a daily basis. We'll continue dream weaving maybe some names at free agency and talk our way through this thing as we get to Jack Brewer. He's going to join me in studio at 10 o'clock. And then Pat Micheletti. We're going to have a final hour of hockey that's starting at 11. You're listening to 9 to noon on The Fan.
Wild Wednesday is sponsored by Jim Beam, the official bourbon of the Minnesota Wild, are here all season long. Listen every Wednesday through March for your chance to win tickets.
Short segment, it's Nordo in for PA. He was a late scratch this morning. Hoping he feels better. Back in the mix tomorrow. Because it is going to be super thematic throughout the week as we dreamweave our way to legal tampering and ultimately Vikings free agency. And as I noted, 2025, 9 to noon, we're going to read more texts. This is Judd in Chicago. I'm not sure that the Vikings get a third for Sam in compensatory picks next year. I think his contract with a new team will be lower than people expect. It's going to be in the $30 million range at best. Tough for me, Judd, and everybody else. It's difficult for me at this stage still to really wrap my head around or put a stamp on exactly how much Sam Darnold is going to garner in a new contract. I do believe it is, as he notes, 3 years, $90 million. 3 years, it's going to be 3 years. And I don't believe entirely guaranteed, but a fair chunk of it. I think, and this isn't unreasonably put, $45 million guaranteed. I think it could potentially be in that area. And that it's not going to reap a compensatory third. Just my 2 cents. That's Judd. This is another text, though. Do the math, Nordo. How many good free agent QBs are out there for teams to sign versus the needy teams? Those needy squads can talk up the draft QBs all they want. But there are no diamonds in the rough compared to a pro game ready Sam Darnold. That was a conversation last week in Indy. Is this just a 2 QB draft? What does that drop off look from Cam Ward, from Shedeur Sanders, and interchangeable? I've seen, I like Sanders. He's the best in this draft. Others, Cam Ward. What's that drop off then to a Jackson Dart? He's got a good point. There's two angles. There's 2 angles to look at here with Sam. And, with this tag deadline, I think that will finally tell the story tomorrow. You said it is mañana, correct?
It is.
All right. I'm glad you hit me with that because I was sitting here, actually not here, but prior to the show, I'm like, when the hell do they actually have to tag him by? I appreciate your help on that.
Yeah, 3 Central tomorrow.
Yes, I thought it was sometime this week. I guess I was right on that, but a little bit of narrowing it down is always preferred. But there are 2 things, that'll kind of tell the story maybe on what their immediate thoughts are, and will they try to thread that needle? And again, I don't think they'll be able to, but I could be wrong. But there's an element here. His market is going to be on a bad QB draft. And then you look at some of the other free agent quarterbacks that are out there. Now, Kirk Cousins, eventually it sounds like will be available, but the Falcons do need to release him first. And then again, they can play that game with the Russell Wilson contract, minimum cash with new team, old team foot in the bill. Sounds pretty nice. But you have Sam Darnold, and then it is the Zach Wilson types. It is Jacoby Brissett, who can fill in for 4, but can he play 15, 16, 17 games? Marcus Mariota, backing up Jaden Daniels. Does he want to start again, or is he comfortable? Has he found his way to being comfortable now? I think he's 30, 31 years old. Is he comfortable just being that backup? The Drew Locks of the world. Justin Fields. Justin Fields isn't even 26 yet. And we already kind of got to have this conversation about where his next potential, he'd be on his 3rd team already. Justin Fields, former first-round pick. Mac Jones, first-round pick. Wentz is available. Man, that rookie season he had, I don't know if he ultimately would have still kind of found his way into decline. He was an MVP. He was an MVP in 2017 before that injury. I think it was against the Rams. And his season, certainly, Nick Foles comes in. It's magical. We're all happy for him, right, Vikings fans? We're all happy for the Eagles. Go Birds. No. But Russell Wilson now, he's no longer going to be on the cheap, so I wonder how that looks to a new team. But it's a light crop. But the other side of it, I got a text message here, and I want to see if I can give proper credit. No name in this mix here. Compensatory picks, yes, are based on net free agency losses and gains. There is an element here. If we're holding out for that compensatory pick, the Vikings have $60 million in cap space. Would we have enough net losses versus gains to get that 2026 third round pick? That's a fair question. So Kwesi and company are analyzing all of that. What about Darnold going to Maxo's favorite team? Top pick in the draft. Tennessee Titans, they can select Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward if they want to. Third round of Malik Willis. Malik Willis never looked better than when he played for your team against the Tennessee Titans.
Correct.
Funny enough. Then they go into the second round with Will Levis. It's the coffee and the mayo. He's just too chaotic back there. How much of that is the O-line, the scheme? How much of it is the QB? He can fire some bullets once in a while. He's impressive at times. But the team might be ready to move on from him as well. Maybe Sam Darnold goes to Tennessee. What about Darnold going there? What about Darnold going to a lot of places? Again, as we're framing it up here, the texter's right. I think that was Old Blue. You're my boy, Blue. Old Blue. You're right. There will be a market for him. But the tag and trade still seems mightily difficult. And there is an excitement factor. You mentioned it earlier during Vikes Bites, Brett, is I want to talk about Milton Williams. I want to talk about DJ Reed. I want to talk about Carlton Davis. Can he finally make all the games? He's never played a full, healthy season in his NFL career. Pretty good man corner, though. Looked pretty good with Flores. How about Javon Holland? Safety out of Miami. Tough 2024. It's his birthday today. Maybe Kwesi can call Javon Holland, wish him a happy birthday, maybe kick the tires. You mentioned underrated spot. He's a safety. What does the future of the safety room look like? Will Freeze, that guard out of the Colts, does him ripping up or breaking his tibia, does him, that injury that took place, he was on the field, I think 2022. He began starting games with regularity midway through 2022. So he had a front row seat for when the Vikings made that historic 30-plus point comeback against the Colts in 2022. He was not on the field when the Vikings battered Joe Flacco this last year. But does that tibia injury, does that take a couple of bucks off the final tab for Will Freeze? Again, interior O-line needing to get better. I mentioned Dahlman, that cat from Atlanta. That's a sneaky spot, center spot. That's a name. Do we find, if we aren't able to consummate a deal with Aaron Jones, are we suddenly dusting off Nick Chubb highlights? I don't know if Chubb's got it. Man, Chubb was so prolific. Week 2, week 3, something like that, 2 years ago. Tears it up. Hasn't been the same since. That's disappointing. Nick Chubb's awesome. His vision and just how relentless he is. But he might never be the same post-injury. This is what I'm excited to talk about. So Sam's going to be here. Sam's going to be tag and trade. Sam's going to enter free agency. But I'm excited to hit on some of those names as we continue the theme throughout the week of dream weaving into free agency. 60+ million in cap space. And that we haven't even factored in the levers that can be pulled. If you recall, I'm sure you read his work as Vikings fans, Ben Gessling, Star Tribune, but he laid out a nice article a couple of weeks ago. The additional flexible moves that the Vikings can make in terms of restructuring deals. Last year of a contract for Van Ginkel. What can the Vikings do maybe to knock that number down? It's a fat number on TJ Hawkinson. Love having him on this team, and I'm hoping that this offseason allows him to get fully past the knee. But that's a fat number for TJ Hawkinson. Can that be knocked down a bit? And with these contracts and the void years stacked on the back, the ability to make 60, could 60 be 75 million by the time free agency begins? It's going to be an exceptionally busy week. But at this stage, there isn't really a name that's off the table in free agency. That's another thing that Vikings fans haven't been able to say for a very long time. So just very excited about it. Very excited to continue this week with PA, narrowing down on some of our favorite guys and dream weaving our way into free agency. Second hour ahead, Nordo in for PA. I'm expecting Jack Brewer, former Gopher, former Viking. We're going to chat some football. We're going to chat a bill that's in process at the Capitol. He's in town for that and many things. We're going to have a great conversation with Jack Brewer around the corner. It's 9 to noon.